Springtime is a time of rebirth and renewal. Flowers and trees blooming and all that crap. So leave it to Stephen King to write a story about springtime and make it about a serial killer. Here, constant watchers, is Stephen King's Strawberry Spring. Strawberry Spring had a long and winding road on its way to its final appearance in Stephen King's first short story collection, Night Shift, in 1978. Before that, it was published in two other magazines, first in the fall 1968 issue of Hubris magazine, and then republished in the November 1975 issue of Cavalier magazine. You see, kids, back then, we had to get our short stories from spicy men's magazines like Cavalier.
It's Nudie Magazine Day!
It was so annoying having to flip through all those photos of scantily clad, beautiful women just to try to find short stories to stimulate us. Our brains, I mean. Where was I? Oh, yeah. By the time Strawberry Spring made it into Night Shift in 1978, King had heavily revised it from his previously published version. Set in a fictional New England college called New Sharon College, the story follows an unnamed narrator reflecting on a series of brutal murders 8 years ago in March of 1968 that seemed to coincide with a strange weather event called a Strawberry Spring. Now, 8 years later, the Strawberry Spring hath returned, and people are starting to mysteriously disappear. Here's how the story starts. Spring Heel Jack. I saw those two words in the paper this morning, and my God, how they take me back. All of that was 8 years ago, almost to the day. Once, while it was going on, I saw myself on nationwide TV, the Walter Cronkite Report. Just a hurrying face in the general background behind the reporter, but my folks picked me out right away. They called long distance. My dad wanted my analysis of the situation. He was all bluff and hearty and man-to-man. My mother just wanted me to come home. But I didn't want to come home. I was enchanted by that dark and mist-blown Strawberry Spring, and by the shadow of violent death that walked through it on those nights 8 years ago. The shadow of Spring Heel Jack. In New England, they call it a Strawberry Spring. No one knows why. It's just a phrase the old-timers use. They say it happens once every 8 or 10 years. What happened at New Sharon Teachers College that particular Strawberry Spring, there may be a cycle for that too, but if anyone has figured it out, they've never said. As the narrator recalls the events of that long-ago Strawberry Spring, he becomes increasingly disturbed by the similarities between those murders and a recent series of disappearances on the campus. Could Spring Heel Jack be back? Short answer, yes. But amidst all the paranoia and confusion of the initial murders and the recurrence of them 8 years later, who could the killer be? We'll get to that later. Anyone with a cursory knowledge of serial killers can probably spot the inspiration for Spring Heel Jack in King's story. He's pulling from the granddaddy of all serial killers, Jack the Ripper. Hey, if you're gonna steal from the best. The press, always fickle, ignored the strong resemblance our murderer bore to Jack the Ripper and dug further back, all the way to 1819. Anne Bray had been found on a soggy path of ground some 12 feet from the nearest sidewalk, and yet there were no footprints, not even her own. An enterprising New Hampshire newsman with a passion for the arcane christened the killer Spring Heel Jack, after the infamous Dr. John Hawkins of Bristol, who did 5 of his wives to death with odd pharmaceutical knickknacks. And the name, probably because of that soggy yet unmarked ground, stuck. Jack the Ripper is one of history's most notorious serial killers, due in large part to the fact that his identity remains unknown. His spree of gruesome murders in London's Whitechapel district in 1888 captured the public imagination back then and continues to confound, perplex, and intrigue us to this day. And back then, the Whitechapel district was capital P poor, overcrowded, crime-ridden. The growing lower class became increasingly desperate for any sort of income, driving many to turn to drugs and prostitution. With an abundance of crime and not enough police to handle it, not to mention the lower class being a lower priority than the upper crust elites, the Whitechapel district was the perfect place for a sadistic serial killer to murder with abandon. So began the murders. The spree of killings attributed to Jack the Ripper began in the late summer and autumn of 1888. The victims, primarily impoverished women working as prostitutes, were gruesomely mutilated, leading to widespread fear and sensationalized media coverage. Yes, even back then, nothing piqued the public's interest like some true crime. The savagery of the killings sent shockwaves through Victorian society and sparked a manhunt like no other. Even though there were a total of 11 Whitechapel murders between April 3rd, 1888 and February 13th, 1891, the so-called canonical 5 are most commonly attributed to Jack the Ripper, with the remaining 6 being a little more in question. The canonical 5, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Edowis, and Mary Jane Kelly, all shared similar patterns of brutality and mutilation. Deep slash wounds to the throat, facial mutilations, mutilation to the abdomen and genital area, and the removal of internal organs. With the murders both terrifying and captivating the City of London, as well as the newspapers publishing sensationalized reports, plus all the wild speculation about the identity of the killer, the London Metropolitan Police had an uphill battle to fight. Add to that the lack of forensic evidence, false leads, blind alleys, the poor investigative techniques of the time, and the killer's apparent penchant for just striking at random. It's no wonder that the Ripper eluded police and remains unidentified today. But of course, there are theories, many of which rely on the killer having a deep knowledge of anatomy and a proclivity for slicing and dicing. Hence, local butchers and surgeons regularly appearing at the top of the suspects list. And of course, members of the royal family, because they are behind everything. With the true identity of Jack the Ripper remaining unsolved to this day, it's no wonder the story continues to pique our interest. One of the first major serial killers in history, and his identity is a mystery. But perhaps a lot of this is also due to the Ripper's self-mythologizing at the time. 2 notable letters sent to the authorities reveal a killer both sadistic and hungry for the spotlight. Now, I should mention that both of these letters are allegedly written by Jack the Ripper, but there's no way of knowing for sure since he was never caught. The first letter, dubbed the Dear Boss letter, was dated September 25th, 1888, and was sent to the Central News Agency of London. And it is from this letter where Jack the Ripper got his name.
Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That rope about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down holes, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to scream. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue, and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ear off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Your cool, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands, curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now.
That's right. Jack the Ripper was a Victorian-era George Costanza, taking the initiative and giving himself a cool nickname.
I need a nickname that makes people light up.
You mean like Liza?
I was thinking T-Bone.
The second letter is the so-called From Hell letter, also known as the Lusk letter. Lusk letter because it was sent to George Lusk, the chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee in October 1888, along with half of a preserved human kidney.
From hell. Mr. Lusk, so I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. To other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you only wait a while longer. Signed. Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
The taunting nature of these letters would set a template for many serial killers to come, including Zodiac and BTK, both of whom risked getting caught in favor of mocking and humiliating the authorities. This From Hell letter, by the way, would later serve as the basis for the award-winning graphic novel From Hell, written by legendary writer Alan Moore, who also wrote Watchmen and one of my personal favorite comic book runs, Swamp Thing. From Hell, first a letter, then a graphic novel, was itself adapted into a 2001 movie starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. Speaking of adaptations, Strawberry Spring has a very unusual adaptation. No, it's not a movie, not a TV show, not a graphic novel. It's a podcast. And as of the making of this video, it is the very first and only podcast adapted from Stephen King's work, and it's got a stacked cast starring Sydney Sweeney, Garrett Hedlund, and Milo Ventimiglia. Jeez, given the pedigree of this, it must be pretty awesome, right? So, the identity of the real Jack the Ripper remains unknown to this day. But that begs the question, do we ever discover the true identity of Spring Hill Jack in Strawberry Spring? Well, here are the final moments of the story. I'll leave you to decide. This morning's paper says a girl was killed on the new Sharon campus near the Civil War cannons. She was killed last night and found in a melting snowbank. She was not all there. My wife is upset. She wants to know where I was last night. I can't tell her because I don't remember. I remember starting home from work, and I remember putting my headlights on to search my way through the lovely creeping fog, but that's all I remember. I've been thinking about that foggy night when I had a headache and walked for air and passed all the lovely shadows without shape or substance. And I've been thinking about the trunk of my car, such an ugly word, trunk, and wondering why in the world I should be afraid to open it. I can hear my wife as I write this in the next room, crying. She thinks I was with another woman last night. And oh dear God, I think so too. Dun dun dun! Spring Hill Jack is none other than our trusty, reliable, unnamed narrator. Not exactly a shocking twist you don't see coming, but it's pretty effective thanks to the shortness of the short story. Now, if you were to say, have this be your twist ending after 4 hours worth of podcast, then you might catch on to the twist pretty quick and find the majority of the podcast a slog to get through. But, yeah. Maybe we'll get another crack at an adaptation in about 8 years, when Spring Hill Jack strikes again! If you like what we're doing over here at the Stephen Kingdom and would like to show us a little monetary love, our Patreon has all sorts of exclusive goodies for our supporters, including extended and deleted scenes, behind-the-scenes featurettes, early access to episodes, and your name in the end credits. Be sure to subscribe to the Stephen Kingdom channel here, and check out our past short story episodes here. Long days and pleasant nights, Constant Watchers.